Atlantico. As promised, I said I would return to review this ship once she received a tailor-fitted commander. That commander is now here, Enrique Fernandez. I'll show you the lowdown on old Henry here in a few, but to start, I know why you are all here. Let's see the secondaries in action. Are they effective? Are they fun? Is it worth it to spec into? Is it just a bunch of fireworks? Let's take a gander. Atlantico is a ship that was never actually built, but would have been a projected battleship for the Brazilian Navy in the early 1900s, so it's rooted in real designs. In our game, it sails at Tier 7 under the Pan-American flag. The long and the short of it, a mess of 15-inch British guns up top and some monstrous secondaries. Those large turrets on this side of the ship are 234mm secondaries, bigger than Baltimore guns, and 8 on each side. They have amazing penetration, deal a ton of damage, and they set fires very, very well. It's a ship that will make Bismarck captains jealous. But she is slow, and she does have a small HP pool. Our build, full secondaries, baby, and they seem to be quite effective in my testing. The real gameplay I want to show you won't have a ton of the secondaries in it, but it will showcase another side of Atlantico, and that is what you'll be doing for, 60 to 70% of the actual gameplay using the main batteries, especially with proper battleship positioning. So this game is going to show what it's like to take a central location, and it's just something that's going to be a part of the play in the ship since she's so painfully slow. I'm talking Kansas slow. But before we go any farther, let's jump over and see the build. I spec'd into secondary reload, damage control, concealment, and more secondaries. The new commander is Enrique Fernandez, and just take a look at that base trait. Eagle Eye improves your battleship gun range and secondary gun range. That's a pretty good inspiration. He is a hybrid commander as well with accuracy perks and brawler skills. Secondary interest is our legendary skill, and as you can see, it's quite potent in damage output. My inspirations, Von Hipper and Haruna, full send. Runner-ups would be Kondo, as this battleship really needs to rely on stealth, in my opinion. No flammable cannoneer for me. I don't enjoy the added fire chance, and this game will showcase my luck with the guns so far in this ship. They're great without focusing on accuracy, in my opinion. They are quite consistent feeling, and having 10 of them doesn't hurt. You're throwing a lot of crap downrange. Some of it is bound to stick. The guns are interesting. Think Warspite, the British Tier 5 premium battleship. See, most British battleships have a short fuse timer, meaning the shells are going to arm quickly without going through a lot of armor. It's great for shooting cruisers, but it suffers when shooting at longer ranges or heavily armored targets like battleships. Now, Warspite and Atlantico, they're different than other British battleships because they have normal fuse timers, meaning the shells penetrate more armor before going boom. And furthermore, Atlantico has higher shell velocity than the Warspite. So overall, it means pretty darn good pen for British 380mm guns. Now this commander, Ol Henny, as of now, he's only attainable, as I understand it, through buying the Atlantico, because it might be silly to sell a commander if you don't have a ship to put him on, right? So if memory serves, it used to be this way for guys like Jerzy Swirsky and maybe Konrad Helfrich for the Pan-Euro guys, but eventually the commander came to the store where you could buy him for 900,000 Commander XP. So it might be a while if you want this guy for an inspiration but don't want the Atlantico. It could be a bit. Alright, I'll throw my 10 game testing stats up on the screen. Note the low XP due to secondary builds in all the games. The win rate is really good despite playing 7 matches solo. How did I win 7 solo? I don't know. The only match I lost was actually in a division. Thank you, Popcorn, and you sank me. Just kidding. As for the stats, if you were interested in purchasing this ship, let's look at the survivability first, and it may not be the highest of points. One glance at the HP will show you why, but it's not all bad. Check out the American damage control party it gets. This consumable lasts 20 seconds when you trigger it. If you've never paid attention to this, different battleships have different damage control parties. Basically, with an American one, it is 20 seconds of immunity from floods and fires. IJN BBs get 10 seconds, Soviet BBs 10 seconds, French BBs 15 seconds. It's just another stat to consider, and Atlantico gets really the best one in the game. The heals are subpar, but let's take a look at the armor scheme. It's actually quite good. Partial icebreaker, 51mm deck, will thwart HE spam, and where is the Citadel? It is well below the waterline and difficult to access. The freeboard does look to be a lot, but this is actually a pretty small battleship, and it will give you a smaller target for your enemies. The other day, an Iowa rolled up behind me to push me out of the way, and I realized just how tiny this thing is. It is a very small battleship. Granted, you're still going to need to be careful with positioning, as in any battleship. The biggest complaint of most players is, I just get HE spammed to death. Well, it's likely due to how you are positioning and setting up on the map. On to the guns. 1.8 Sigma, as far as I understand it. That's not that great, but honestly, shooting them felt very comfortable, like mentioned. The AP shells, they're your only shell, by the way. Keep in mind, you have no HE shells to fire, so stubborn bow-tanking enemies or DDs can be an issue, but the AP shells are pretty decent. The DPM is on par with the Bismarck, nothing to really write home about. The AP shells also don't deal a ton of damage. In fact, aside from the Odin and the Brandenburg, it is the worst damage for AP shells at tier 7. But enter the secondaries. With a base 7.5 kilometer range, that is tied with the Bismarck and the Zeitan. It is just marginally behind Bismarck B and the Brandenburg as the longest reach in secondaries at tier 7. The 234s pack a wallop, over 3,800 damage per shell, and the accuracy with this build seems to be pretty good. Honestly, it is how I would choose to build her. It's really this ship's gimmick, but I think she could play quite well as a hybrid too. Another feature I enjoy of Atlantico is her firing angles. I love a BB with good firing angles, and Atlantico makes it easy to stay good and angled where you're safe and keep all guns in the fight. The AA isn't as bad as I thought it would be, to be honest. It's a little above average with the DPS, but the real problem with Atlantico lies in her top speed. She ties with Kansas with a 25 knot base speed, and that is painfully slow at tier 7, where you really need to get around the map and make things happen. So proper positioning is going to be the key in the ship. If you want to have fun in the ship, you have to position well. And it's the whole reason I'm showing this game in the background. We had other more exciting battles, couple secondary bangers, but if you want to succeed, I think playing central locations or just not sailing too far out of the fight is key with this ship. I don't see players playing middle very often, and it's such a integral part of the game. Yes, when a flank collapses, it can be devastating to your team. Your team is going to get rolled, but when someone ignores the middle and lets an enemy position here, it can be just as devastating. Most of this match, I've had access to red team broadsides like KGV and their Atlantico as they sailed to the flank. Finally, with a 14.9 kilometer detection range, it's average, but we have buffed ours down to 12.8, which is a useful stat, especially on such a slow ship that cannot really run from danger like other battleships. Speaking of running from danger, we're not getting there very fast, but this match is going to end with the dev strike of the carrier, so stay tuned for that. But we'll finally get out into the middle where our secondaries can work on the Veneto and the enemy Atlantico. And this match is wrapping up quite nicely. Overall, I am really enjoying this ship way more than I expected to. It was fun even with the Universal Commander, but now it is just, wow. It is great. This commander has really brought it out of the ship. The guns, they are just fine enough that I don't feel like I'm stuck speccing into their accuracy or reload like sometimes I feel like I have to do on German battleships. And the secondaries, when you get them into the fight, are an absolute blast. Call them fireworks all you want, but their effects over the course of a match can be very detrimental to red team's health. One thing about them, though, that I have noticed is that they seem to get destroyed easily, more easily than I would like. So while I think her armor scheme is quite nice and pretty tanky, be careful in allowing yourself to be a punching bag for the red team because you could lose some of your secondary DPM. Now, this ship is 17,500 doubloons. I think that is a lot of money. If I were not a community contributor for Wargaming and this ship were not provided to me for free and for testing purposes, I wouldn't fork out the money for this ship. There are very few ships that I would fork out the money for, but everyone has different hobbies and everyone is in different financial situations, different strokes for different folks. But if this ship looks like it's fun for you, go for it. Perhaps you don't have the Brandenburg and perhaps you missed out on the Bismarck B. I could see this ship being someone's premier secondary built battleship at tier 7. I think it's competitive, I think it's fun, And overall, I'm leaning towards giving this thing 4 out of 5 stars. A solid 5 for fun factor and maybe a 3.5 in terms of power. But definitely respect this thing if you see it out and about, because it's a strong ship. I'm of course curious what you guys think. Would love to hear from you in the comment section down below. Also be sure to leave me a like as we let these shells rip on the Kaga. Oh, it feels so good to shoot a carrier. So good. Anyways, be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any future... Oh, it wasn't a dev strike. Whatever. Close enough. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.